This old woman, her hair already silver, still puts on delicate makeup every Valentine's Day and comes to the train station because years ago, her husband promised her he would return on Valentine's Day. But now, 65 years have passed, and he never came back. Still, her love never faded. Year after year, she stands at that same platform, waiting for the man she's longed for all her life. Every time she looks through the crowded station and sees others reuniting, her calm heart ripples with emotion. She imagines her husband running toward her from the exit, holding her tight again. But every hope, every dream ends in disappointment. 65 years of waiting, she has gone from a young beauty to an old woman with silver hair. Time took away her looks, but never her devotion. When she looks at the old photo of them at the station, her face blooms with a shy, girlish smile. Her thoughts drift back to the day they met. It was a summer day, 65 years ago. They met at a crowded train station. Just one glance, and their hearts were stirred. Love bloomed between them like a burst of fireworks. Days passed, and their bond grew deeper. Soon they married, full of love and laughter. But during their honeymoon, Billy received the order to go to war. In that era of smoke and gunfire, separations were common, yet for Caroline, the pain was unbearable. They held each other tightly in the waiting room. Billy kissed her forehead gently, then touched her growing belly, full of guilt and sorrow. He knew he would miss the birth of their child, but he promised, next Valentine's Day, he would return to her and their baby. Caroline held his hand tightly, memorizing his warmth. But soon, the train whistle cut through the air. It was time to part. Tears filled her eyes as she walked him to the platform. They kissed one last time before the conductor called out. Billy boarded the train, taking with him all her love and longing. As the train started moving, Caroline suddenly remembered she hadn't given him the Valentine's card she had prepared. She ran after the train, shouting his name. Hearing her voice, Billy leaned out the window and caught the card she held up. It was just a card, but for the years ahead, it would become his only comfort in the chaos of war. Caroline watched as the train disappeared, her heart breaking. She searched every window, hoping to see him again, but the train showed no mercy. It simply rolled away, just when despair was about to drown her. A familiar voice echoed from the last carriage. Their eyes met one final time, and for that brief second, she felt peace. She looked at his smile, wishing time would stop, but reality pulled them apart. Caroline whispered softly, "Happy Valentine's Day." From that moment on, she began her long wait. Every night, when the world grew quiet, she sat by the window, sleepless and worried. She began to write 2 letters every day. One letter is filled with tenderness, telling him about daily life and her hopes for their child. The other hides her quiet fears, a prayer for his safe return. Before sending each letter, she keeps a little ritual. She puts on her favorite red lipstick, presses a warm kiss on the corner of the envelope. It's more than a mark. It's a silent vow of love carried across mountains and seas. But wartime letters travel like birds through fog, slow and uncertain. Weeks of waiting stretch into forever. Until one day, a letter finally arrives. It carries Billy's love and guilt between its trembling lines. He admits he can't be home for the birth, and that regret weighs heavy on his heart. To make up for it, he builds a tiny airplane by hand, a gift for their unborn child. He hopes it will carry his dreams and courage into the baby's world. But after that letter, silence. For months, nothing comes. Then one day, the postman arrives with a heavy expression, but he stops at the neighbor's door. Caroline's heart tightens. She watches the neighbor break into tears over a telegram, and her chest aches like it's been cut open. She can't imagine how she would survive if such a message came for her. That night, as she prays for Billy's safety, sudden labor pains hit. With the help of friends, she gives birth to their child. The baby's first cry cuts through her fear, like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. The little one becomes her only source of hope. In the months that follow, Caroline writes to Billy constantly, telling him about their baby's smiles, first steps, and laughter. Then one day, the radio brings good news. The war is ending. Tears fill her eyes as joy and relief wash over her. But just as hope fills her heart, the postman returns, walking slowly, almost afraid. Her hands tremble as she takes the telegram. The words hit like a blade. Billy's plane went missing during a mission. He's officially listed as missing in action. Caroline clutches her baby, tears streaming down her face, but she refuses to believe he's gone. Something inside her says he's still alive. From that day on, her world is wrapped in quiet grief. Yet she doesn't give up. Instead, she begins a wait that will last 65 years. Every Valentine's Day, rain or shine, weak or weary, she dresses up carefully, puts on makeup, and goes to the train station. She wants to greet her husband with the same smile he fell in love with. Years pass. The young woman becomes an old lady with silver hair. Even the station master bows to her story, touched by her love, but time spares no one. Caroline's health begins to fail. Her family sees it and aches inside. They hope she can find peace before it's too late. So her grandson, Lucas, contacts a TV station, hoping media can help find Billy's whereabouts. The story spreads fast and captures hearts. The director sees its power and sends a senior reporter, Susan, to interview Caroline. Susan arrives with deep respect, but when she introduces herself, Caroline gently refuses. She says love doesn't need a stage, nor applause. She just wants to guard it quietly, in her own way. Susan almost leaves, but curiosity and admiration hold her back. Susan returns to the house and knocks again, this time pretending to be Lucas's girlfriend. Hearing it's her grandson's girlfriend, Caroline finally opens the door. The moment Susan steps inside, her eyes are drawn to the wall. It's covered with photos. Every frame tells a story, like a film of Caroline's entire life, from a bright young girl to a gentle old woman, each photo a silent witness to her lifelong love for Billy. But just then, Caroline picks up the phone and calls Lucas, asking why he didn't come home with his girlfriend. Susan panics. Moments later, Lucas arrives, curious about how the interview is going. Susan, flustered, changes the subject immediately. Luckily, Lucas doesn't question further. From that day, the two young people keep visiting Caroline, pretending to be a couple, until, somehow, they start to feel like one for real. Caroline begins to sense the truth. Susan isn't Lucas's girlfriend, but she also sees the spark between them. So, she invites Susan to interview her again. Caroline opens her heart. She tells Susan about how she and Billy met, how they fell in love, and how she's waited all these years. At the end, she looks at Susan and says softly, "Cherish the love you have. Once it's gone, it never returns." Before the interview can finish, Caroline says she needs to rest. On her way upstairs, she slips and falls. She's rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, after careful examination, the doctor confirms she's fine, but the station director, worried about liability, decides to cancel the program entirely. Susan is upset. She begs to continue once Caroline recovers, but the director refuses, instead sending her to another city to interview a member of Congress. Ironically, that detour changes everything. After the interview, Susan tells the congressman about Caroline's love story. He's deeply moved and promises to help. With the cooperation of several departments, they uncover new leads. Following the clues, Susan visits the home of one of Billy's former comrades. But sadly, the man has passed away just months earlier. His son gives Susan a letter left behind by his father. Using these small pieces, Susan begins a long, difficult search. After countless setbacks, she finally tracks down another veteran who once fought beside Billy. Under Susan's careful arrangement, she's set to speak with the old soldier through a video call. When the screen lights up, Caroline trembles with anticipation. "Where is my husband?" the old soldier sighs. He explains that during a mission, his and Billy's planes were shot down and crashed deep in the jungle. Local villagers rescued them, and by some miracle, they survived. Through those desperate days, Billy clung to Caroline's photo, drawing strength from her smile. But fate wasn't kind. During an escape attempt, they were ambushed. When an innocent child was caught in the crossfire, Billy didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and shielded the boy with his own body. Billy forced himself to stay awake, pushing through the pain. He ordered his comrade to take the child and run to safety, while he stayed behind and never left that distant foreign land again. In his final moments, Caroline's face filled his mind. He thought of his promise, that he would come back to her on Valentine's Day, but now he knew he couldn't keep it. Regret flooded his heart like a rising tide, swallowing every thought. He knew he owed her a warm embrace, a shared future, a life they were meant to have together. Then one day, two soldiers came to her door. Their solemn footsteps reminded her of that postman so many years ago, but this time was different. They stood tall, saluted, and paid her the highest honor. Thanks to Susan's televised story, Caroline's devotion touched countless hearts and reached the nation's attention. After thorough investigation, the military finally located Billy's resting place and recovered the belongings buried with him. For his extraordinary bravery, the government awarded him posthumous medals of honor, symbols of courage and sacrifice that would forever bear his name. Another Valentine's Day arrives. As always, Caroline puts on her makeup, carefully dresses up, and walks to the train station with her brightest smile. After 66 long years, her wait is finally complete. Though this reunion exists only between heaven and earth, her love, however, never died. It stood firm like stone, untouched by time, unbroken by fate. Through decades of loneliness, that love only grew deeper, shining brighter, becoming the light that guided her soul. Caroline's story is a mirror, reflecting life's fragility and our power to love. We can't control tomorrow, nor stop loss and sorrow from coming, but we can choose how to live, how to love, how to treasure those who walk beside us. Don't let the good slip away, and don't let regret be the only thing that stays.